Hello, my name's Ben.
And my name's Josh.
And welcome back to FPL Graduates and welcome back to another video. It's been a while on the YouTube, but we are back with another banger.
Yeah, just in time for a cheeky double game week. This one's quite big as well. Some big decisions to make. So we're going to look at the three most important teams in this double game week and tell you which players to get in your FPL teams.
Okay, so the first player we're going to talk about is Luke Shaw. Now, the ownership, it's going to be a bit higher than 3.3% come the deadline. Let's be sure on that. And yeah, I really like him as an asset. He's been fantastic value over the last few weeks, and he's been picked up by quite a lot of the top 10k, top 100k players. The elite players are getting this guy in and have got this guy in for the last 3 or 4 game weeks, and he's producing some really good underlying stats and is secure for minutes, Josh, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. 32 points since the restart of the World Cup, which is really good numbers. I don't think anyone expected him to score against Bournemouth, so that 15-pointer really does inflate that, but he has been playing well. I think one thing to note with Shaw is if he does play centre-back, which he has been doing, he is a bonus points magnet in that position. And then if he does play full-back, he does get that attacking threat. Although those stats there, XG of 0.79 and an XA of 1.76, it's not the best in the world, for an attacking fullback. I think the reason we're seeing lower attacking numbers from Shaw is because obviously there's no target man striker anymore like we have with Ronaldo. Obviously, Wout Weghorst could be on the way, who knows, but he won't be in time for this game week. Maybe by double game week 22 that Man United could have. It's not on this graph here because obviously it's not confirmed yet, but if Leeds make it through the fourth round of the FA Cup, they've got to beat Cardiff in the replay and then beat either Boreham Wood and Accrington Stanley. And then if Man United beat Reading, there will be a double game week 22 almost certainly of Leeds versus Man United as well as Palace versus Man United. So that could be a very good double game week.
But yeah, it's as long as it doesn't go to a replay, Josh. We're not saying which way it's going to go. We may have particular biases on this channel. But yeah, overall, for the double game week potential that he had even before game week 20, going forwards, short term, the fixtures were looking tough, but the double game weeks negate that. Long term, he's a great hold to have as well. So definitely worth investing in, especially with sort of the low amount of options that we're seeing sort of produce high amounts of returns in that defensive spot. So next up, we're going to go with the triple Manchester United to start off the video. It's Bruno Fernandes. And yeah, again, this season, he's not looked like the best FPL asset, similarly to sort of the second half of last season as well. But we all know what he can do on his day, and he can produce big FPL hauls. We've seen him in double game weeks before come out with 24-point hauls out of completely nowhere, really. He wasn't really in form. He bagged a haul and off he went for a double game week last year. This year, I think there's potential for him to do the same. Obviously, the first game of the double game week is a little bit tougher, but I do believe Bruno Fernandes does hold some value, especially if you're going for like an attacking double up or triple up in that Manchester United team.
Yeah, for me, I'm not so keen on Bruno. I think he's an integral part of that Man United squad, but his role compared to, a couple seasons ago in lockdown and stuff like that, he doesn't play the same role anymore. He doesn't get those goals that we saw him get. Obviously he was on penalties. We saw in the FA Cup game that Rashford took the penalty whilst Bruno was on the pitch. Martial also took the penalty at the Etihad when Bruno was on the pitch. So I don't even think he has penalties anymore. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he took them. But yeah, it's a bit questionable. And also, I think in build-up in general, Bruno is involved heavily, but him getting those goal involvements is what you want in FPL. And he's probably always that pass to assist or something along those lines. And you can see that in his stats this season, 16 games and only 6 goal involvements. So for me, I think there are better Man United attackers to choose from.
Yeah, I guess you can argue that point with Rashford. Looks a lot better. Martial potentially as well. But for me, still underperforming slightly. I think he should probably have more goals and assists than he does. But if he does get those returns in that double game week, there's a high likelihood that he'll get bonus points as well, because of the way he's playing at Man United team, because of the pass completion rate that we're seeing from him this season. If he does get a return, there's a likelihood and a high likelihood that he'll be involved in at least 1 or 2 bonus points as well.
So as Ben alluded to, Marcus Rashford is up next, and if you haven't got him in your team, I'm not quite sure what you're doing because he is on fire at the moment. As you see there, 10 goal involvements in the Premier League alone. He's been really good, not even overperforming his data as well, which is good to see. What's your thoughts on Rashford so far this season, Ben?
Yeah, I think at this current moment in time, he's pretty much as nailed on essential as you can get. Manchester United, I think the Man City game lends nicely to Marcus Rashford and the Arsenal game as well. Wouldn't even say they're red fixtures for him because he plays his best football on the break, on the counter attack, fast, devastating counter attacks. Marcus Rashford could really do some serious damage in those two games. So yeah, I think you probably should already own him. If you don't, you may be looking like you're a little bit lower in the overall rankings. But if you don't have him, get him in. He's still fantastic value at 7 million. Next up is Anthony Martial. I think for this guy here, for the short term, I think he's a decent pick. He'll get the minutes in the short term. But as we know, and Josh said earlier in the video, Manchester United are looking like they're going to sign at least a striker in the January transfer window, which could limit Martial's sort of ability to be a good FPL asset in the long run. So I'd be definitely wary of that. And with Martial, I'd have an exit plan for him if I was planning to get him in. A lot of people may still own him from sort of the wild card game week. If you do, it probably is a good hold, but I wouldn't go out your way to rip up your teams to get Martial in just because of the long-term risks involved in it.
Okay, so moving on to Manchester City now. So these guys face Man United and Tottenham. So again, two tricky fixtures for City, and obviously they're not I wouldn't say they've been playing their best football of the season so far, but that is because they played absolutely phenomenal at the start of the season. So we're going to go through their defensive options at first. Manuel Akanji is at first, £5 million. I think he started every single Premier League game since game week 8, other than last game week. So take of that as what you will. He did start in the FA Cup against Chelsea, where they came out 4-0 victors there. Low ownership. What's your thoughts on Akanji, Ben? Obviously, this is going to come down to minutes, really, isn't it? Who's going to play in that defence? Do you think Akanji is one of those spots locked down?
You'd like to think so, but you never know Pep Guardiola. I think he's played well enough to warrant a starting place in that Manchester City team. It's just whether Pep sees the same way. They're performing relatively well. Of late, obviously, it's gone down a little bit, but I still think Akanji's been one of their top performers in that Manchester City defence. He's looked very good. Low ownership, low price point to get into that City defence. I think he's sort of a lot safer as an FPL pick compared to a lot of these Manchester City defenders, because you can guarantee he's either going to play, start, potentially get a clean sheet, or he's not going to feature at all. So you're kind of negating that risk with no possibility really of getting a one-pointer in those single game weeks at least.
Yeah, one more thing to note as well with the centre-backs is that obviously Diaz and Laporte are both out injured for quite a foreseeable amount of time. So it is really a toss-up between, I think, three of them, Akanji being one, Nathan Ake being the other, and then John Stones being the third choice. So it's going to be interesting to see who sort of wins that battle and who wins the roulette. But moving on to someone who I just mentioned, John Stones, best centre back in the world. I heard him get called this week. I'm not so sure if that is necessarily too true, but yeah, he's played very well. Obviously, that goal-saving tackle against Chelsea at the Bridge was fantastic. Do you think he's going to be nailed on for minutes, Ben?
I mean, he does look fantastic at the moment. If there's one defender that I'm going to say is likely to start both games in the double game week, I'd say it's John Stones. He looks the most secure in terms of getting minutes on the pitch in the Premier League. I'd say out of all the City defenders, he's the safest one to go for. 5.4 million. I think he's more nailed on than Akanji. He's playing phenomenally. Probably the best that we've seen John Stones play in a Manchester City shirt has been this season. And can he come up with a little bit of goal involvement potentially? But you're not buying him for that. You're getting him in for the clean sheet points potential. And if they do keep a clean sheet and it's a low scoring game, which it very well could be against Manchester United and Tottenham, then I think John Stones in with a shout of getting some bonus points as well. Next up, we've got Wow, a budget enabler in the Manchester City team, which is crazy. Rico Lewis at 3.9 million. He seems to be almost a favourite with Pep Guardiola at the moment, benching the likes of João Cancelo in the Manchester City team. Now, I don't mind this pick, but I'm unsure because he is so cheap. It's almost worth getting him in. But everyone in FPL at the moment is cheap in terms of budget. So I'd say maybe be wary of this. If you're really low on budget, then by all means go for it. But I do think there are better options in that defense rather than saving sort of the 1 million you could by getting Rico Lewis. So I'd just be aware of like the potential minutes risk. As I think someone like Stones or Akanji is more nailed on. But if you're looking for someone with a little bit more attacking potential, Rico Lewis has taken up some really nice Cancelo-like positioning in that City team.
Yeah, it's interesting with this one. Like you said, I think people are maybe getting their hopes up a little too much and sort of like almost either that or waving it away too soon. You know, you're paying 3.9 million for a potential Man City defender. I think either way, you know, if he does play, fantastic. If he doesn't, then you should have some bench options there anyway to sort of substitute for that. For me, I think it's, you know, there's no risk to it. Like I said there, he either plays or he doesn't. And it might be worth a double up. For me personally, I just don't think the fixtures are worth a defensive double up, even for 3.9 million. I could see City conceding in potentially both of those games. Not that they'll concede much, but I think, yeah, City defensively recently haven't been the best. So, yeah, for me, I think I personally will stay away, but I do not mind picking Rico Lewis if you have to. So moving on to some attacking assets from Manchester City, and this is obviously the obvious one, other than Erling Haaland, who we aren't going to discuss in this video. He just needs to be your captain for this game week, pretty much. Otherwise, you could get absolutely done over by the effective ownership. Kevin De Bruyne then in midfield. Obviously, a lot of people went with him or Salah after the Christmas break. I don't think the De Bruyne owners really missed out on too much other than that haul against Villa for Salah. If you have Salah, are you thinking about moving to De Bruyne? I'm in that position, Ben. What would you do for this double game week?
I mean, the fact that he's sort of blanked in his last 4 game weeks would tell one story, but in the other story, he's actually performed relatively well in the games that he has, and he's produced a high output, and he's actually created one big chance in every single one of those games that he's played, which is quite phenomenal that he's not actually got a return from that as a result of it. So I'd definitely be considering bringing Kevin De Bruyne in for these fixtures, because a player of his quality, it's only a matter of time before, in my opinion, he gets those returns in the Manchester City team, especially with the quality that they have and the fragility potentially in that double game week of the Tottenham defence too.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. You can also, what you're paying for as well at 12.5 million is those minutes. Look at that, 17 games played, over 1,400 minutes. That is rare to see in a Manchester City team. High ownership as well. So if you don't own him, he is going to negatively impact you if he does perform. He is the most underperforming player in the league since the restart, other than Darwin Núñez, for obvious reasons. So if you went out and picked him, you've probably been really unlucky so far. But I don't think there's a haul that far away. Wolves at home as well. We know what he did against Wolves last season. So, yeah, very good pick going forward.
Yeah, I'd say as well, in terms of FPL metrics, it's crazy. I was looking at it the other day, and on FPL, he is like the number one for influence, the number one for creativity, the number one in the ICT index overall out of all players in FPL. So he's underperforming almost to an extent where he needs to get these returns at some point. So yeah, hopefully they're coming. So next up, we've got a really interesting pick, in my opinion. Jack Grealish at 6.8 million. And at the moment, he seems to be a firm favourite of Pep Guardiola. He was rested in the FA Cup, and, you know, he's showing sort of a more sort of keeping the ball style of plays compared to what we've seen before from Grealish, which is why I think Pep seems to be starting him a lot more. And the returns are starting to come as well for Jack Grealish.
Yeah, he's been more of a goal threat, really. Obviously, in that Leeds game, I think he could have walked away with a hat-trick pretty easily. Obviously, he didn't take those chances, but you've just got to be in the right position sometimes, and those chances will fall to you, which is a good sign. You know, it's better than him not being in those positions to score. He's also racked up a couple of assists in his last couple of games as well, which is interesting as well. Obviously, got one against Chelsea, got one against Leeds. So I think if I'm picking a Man City midfielder that isn't Kevin De Bruyne, I think Jack Grealish would be my number one choice. Obviously, Riyad Mahrez, Phil Foden, potentially even Julian Alvarez are other options. What's your thoughts on those guys? Is there anyone out of those that you would pick, Ben?
I mean, to be honest, they seem too much of rotation risk for me to consider them right now. If Alvarez gets a run in a team, I'd be really intrigued by him because he's very cheap. He's taken up one of those striker positions as well, which allows you to sort of invest more into the midfield, which seems to be popping off in FPL at the moment. So if there was one, I'd probably go Alvarez. But Grealish, not a bad shout, just because he's that little bit cheaper as a Manchester City asset going forwards. And Pep seems to be favouring him at the moment.
So our final player of this video is going to be Harry Kane. Obviously, Spurs double as well. But Spurs have been a bit of a hit and miss team this season. Obviously, you know, they've been historically not performing at all in the first half and then turning it on in the second. Obviously, Harry Kane's been a big part of that. I feel like Harry Kane's gone under the radar of a lot of FPL managers this season. 15 goals already. And obviously, a lot of people saying he drops deep, you know, to link up play, gets assists. He's not really been doing that too much this season. You know, 15 goals, 2 assists. He is massively underperforming his XA, which, you know, could be down to the players around him. Son not performing well, Kulusevski being out injured. What's your thoughts on Kane, Ben?
Yeah, really intriguing proposition because he has definitely gone on the under the radar for FPL managers because a lot of FPL managers have invested in their premium in midfield for the likes of Salah and De Bruyne, and the Kane owners are sort of just feasted on that all too well. I think his ownership has stayed relatively low considering. I mean, the double game week for them is probably the least enticing out of all the teams barring Crystal Palace in terms of sort of who you want to bring in. But Kane would be that main guy you want to bring in. Let's hope that he gets the service against sort of these two teams that, you know, could really do Tottenham over. But you know, Kane can score against anyone at any given moment.
Up our double game week transfer targets. Who are you going to bring in? Let us know in the comments. It's going to be an interesting one. I think for me personally, I'll be leaning towards that De Bruyne move from Mo Salah. But yeah, let us know. And are you going to be taking a hit? Double game weeks of the week to do it? Let us know.
Yeah, and as usual, if you like the video, give it a like. Go follow us on all of our socials. And as per usual, I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
later. Have a good game week, everyone.